It's 11 p.m. You should have been asleep an hour ago. But something strange is happening. You're finally focused. The ideas are flowing. The words are coming easily. The work that felt impossible at 2 p.m. is suddenly effortless. You tell yourself, just another hour, just until I finish this part. And somewhere around 1 a.m., you close the laptop feeling productive, maybe even a little proud, and completely aware that tomorrow morning is going to be brutal. You'll hit the alarm, move slowly, drink too much coffee, and spend the first few hours of the day functioning at half capacity. But right now, in this moment, it almost feels worth it. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Millions of people share this exact pattern. The daytime drag, the evening resistance, and then, almost magically, the late-night clarity that makes everything click. And you're not just a night owl with bad habits. There's something real happening in those late hours. The question is whether it's working for you, or quietly working against you. Why the night feels different. Let's start with why the late night feels so good. For creative and focused work. During the day, most people are in a constant state of low-grade interruption. Messages, meetings, the ambient noise of other people's needs. Even when you're not actively responding to anything, your brain is in a kind of standby mode, half ready to be interrupted at any moment. That state is not ideal for deep work. It keeps you in a reactive, surface-level mode of thinking. You're not really in the work. You're hovering just above it, always slightly braced for the next thing that pulls you away. At night, that changes. The world goes quiet. No one is expecting anything from you. Your phone slows down. The social pressure of the day dissolves. And in that quiet, your brain finally has room to stretch, to follow a thought all the way to its end, to sit with a problem long enough for something interesting to emerge. There's also something neurological happening beneath all of this. For many people, particularly those who lean toward evening chronotypes, alertness and cognitive flexibility actually peak later in the day. The body's internal clock doesn't run on the same schedule for everyone. For evening types, the hormonal and neurological conditions that support complex thinking simply arrive later. Creative thinking, in particular, often benefits from a slightly more relaxed, defocused state of mind. The rigid focus of the morning can sometimes work against the kind of loose, associative thinking that good creative work actually requires. Ideas connect in unexpected ways, when you're not forcing them. So the late-night productivity isn't entirely an illusion. For a lot of people, it's genuinely the best cognitive window they have. The problem isn't that it works. The problem is what it costs. The hidden price of borrowed clarity. Sleep is not passive recovery. It's active processing. While you sleep, your brain consolidates the day's learning, transferring information from short-term to long-term memory. It clears metabolic waste through the glymphatic system, a biological cleaning process that only fully activates during sleep. It regulates emotional memory, helping you process difficult experiences and show up less reactive the next day. And it rebuilds the neural architecture that your thinking depends on, preparing the connections and chemical balances that make focus, creativity, and decision-making possible. When you cut into that window, even by an hour or two consistently, you're not just tired the next day. You're operating on a slightly degraded version of your cognitive self. Your working memory is reduced. Your ability to regulate emotional responses weakens. Your capacity for creative problem-solving shrinks. These aren't dramatic collapses. They're subtle, gradual, hard to notice in the moment, which makes them more dangerous, not less. The irony is sharp. You stay up late to do your best work, but the sleep debt you accumulate quietly reduces the quality of your thinking over time. The late-night clarity feels real in the moment, but it's partially borrowed. You're drawing from tomorrow's cognitive reserves, and tomorrow will be slightly poorer for it. And it compounds. One late night is recoverable. A pattern of late nights, the kind that builds up over weeks and months, changes your baseline. You start to forget what it feels like to think clearly from the morning onwards. The tired version of yourself becomes the normal version. You lose access to a cognitive standard you once had, and you don't even notice the loss, because the decline was too gradual to feel like a single moment of change. The real reason the night feels like yours. There's a psychological dimension to the late-night work pattern that doesn't get talked about enough. For many people, the reason they do their best work at night isn't purely biological. It's structural. The late hours are the first time all day that they have uninterrupted time to themselves, and that distinction matters enormously. Think about what the average day actually looks like. Morning is reactive, catching up on messages, getting ready, preparing for what the day will demand. The workday is fragmented. Meetings, requests, context switching, the constant sense that your attention belongs to someone else's agenda. Evening is social or domestic. Dinner, family, winding down, the obligations that follow you home. And somewhere after all of that, when everyone else is asleep, and the demands have finally mercifully paused, there's space, silence, a version of yourself that isn't performing, or responding, or managing anything. In that sense, the late night isn't just productive. It's the only time in the day that feels like yours. This is worth sitting with because it reframes the whole problem. You're not staying up late because you're undisciplined. You're staying up late because you're starving for time that belongs to you. And the night is the only place you've found it. This is also why the solution isn't simply go to bed earlier. If you go to bed earlier without creating that sense of ownership somewhere else in the day, you're not fixing the problem. You're just losing the one window that felt like it belonged to you. And you'll either resent it, resist it, or quietly drift back to the old pattern within a week. What's actually happening in the creative flow? So what is actually going on when the work comes easier at night? Part of it is the absence of expectation. During the day, work carries weight. There are people waiting on it, standards attached to it, the pressure of being seen and evaluated. You're not just doing the work. You're doing it while being perceived. And that perception changes how you work. It narrows you. It makes you second guess. It activates the part of your brain that monitors for social risk, which is useful in many situations, but actively hostile to creative output. At night, with no one watching, and no deadline looming until morning, the pressure drops. The audience disappears. And in that lower pressure state, something loosens in the creative process. You're willing to try things that might not work. You follow tangents. You stay with something longer than feels strictly efficient. And sometimes, that's exactly where the best thinking lies. Psychologists talk about the relationship between arousal and performance. The idea that moderate arousal supports focus, but high arousal, the kind that comes with pressure and visibility, can actually narrow thinking and block creative flow. Night removes the high arousal conditions. It's not just quieter outside. It's quieter inside. And for people whose best work is creative, strategic, or requires sustained deep thinking, that internal quiet is genuinely freeing. Building the conditions earlier. The challenge is that you can't always manufacture that same low-pressure state during the day. But you can approximate it. And that approximation is worth working toward. Because it's the only sustainable path. The only way to get the benefits of the night, without paying the biological toll. The goal is to create a protected block of low-pressure, low-interruption time, somewhere earlier in your day. Not a meeting, not a check-in, not a focus session that still has you half monitoring your inbox. A genuine window that mimics the qualities of the late night. Quiet, unobserved, without immediate external demands pressing in from every direction. For some people, this is early morning, before anyone else is up, before the day has made its first demand. For others, it's a mid-afternoon block, protected with unusual seriousness. Phone in another room, notifications fully off, door closed if possible. The specific time matters less than the quality of the conditions you create within it. What you're trying to recreate is the psychological state, not just the schedule. The feeling of, no one needs me right now. This time is mine. I can follow the work where it wants to go, without having to justify every detour. It's harder to manufacture during the day. The cues for interruption are everywhere, but it becomes easier with practice, and with the deliberate removal of friction. Fewer open tabs, fewer small decisions cluttering the edges of your mental space. The environment you work in is not neutral. It either supports depth, or it constantly pulls you back to the surface. Matching the work to the energy. Not all work benefits equally from the late-night state. Tasks that require precision, logic, and execution. The kind of work where you're implementing something already decided, where accuracy matters more than originality, often benefit more from the morning's sharpness than from the night's looseness. Editing, calculations, structured communication, detailed planning. These tend to go better when you're alert and operating with high cognitive precision. Creative and generative work. Writing from scratch, solving open-ended problems, strategic thinking, exploring new ideas, is more at home in the night's diffuse mode. The looseness that feels like distraction in the morning becomes an asset when you need to make unexpected connections. If you can start to recognize which kind of work you're doing, at any given moment, you can begin matching it more intentionally to your energy. Save the generative, open-ended work for the windows where you naturally have that expansive quality of attention. Save the precise, executable work for the more structured, sharper parts of your day. This won't eliminate the pull toward late nights, but it reduces the urgency. It weakens the belief that the night is the only place where real work can happen, because you've started giving real work a place to live during daylight too. What you're actually capable of. Here's the honest version of what this comes down to. If you do your best work late at night, it's probably real. The clarity, the flow, the ease, That's not in your imagination. Your brain in that window is genuinely performing well for the kind of work you're asking it to do. Don't dismiss that. Don't let anyone tell you that your natural rhythm is just laziness wearing a creative costume. But the pattern has a ceiling, and that ceiling gets lower the longer you keep pushing it. The late night gives you 1 good hour, and quietly takes something from the next 12. Over time, you're not just trading sleep for productivity. You're trading your future cognitive capacity for the feeling of productivity in the present. There's also a deeper question worth asking. What are you capable of when you're not working against your own recovery? What does your best thinking look like when it's not built on accumulated fatigue? Most people who've lived inside the late-night pattern for years have genuinely never found out. The tired version has been the only version for so long that it's hard to imagine the alternative. The goal isn't to become a morning person. If that's not who you are, that kind of forced transformation rarely sticks, and usually just adds guilt to an already complicated relationship with time. The goal is something more specific and more achievable. Stop treating the late night as the only place where real work is possible. Start building the conditions earlier in the day with intention and consistency that give your best thinking room to show up before midnight. Because the work that matters deserves more than borrowed time. And so do you. Not the depleted version of you that makes it to 1 a.m. running on willpower and caffeine. The version that woke up rested, protected a block of time that belonged only to them, and brought their actual best. Not just what was left over after everything else took its share. That version of you is available. It's just waiting for you to stop scheduling it last.